All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Level Up Cooking. I hope you enjoyed the little short episode we put out. We're going to try to put those out periodically from time to time just to kind of answer some questions and things like that. The sweet roll episode, I'm sure you enjoyed it. And again, I can't thank you all enough for all the support that you give. What we're going to do right now is we're going to make kind of a nicer dinner, but we're going to simplify it to the best of our abilities so that it's nice and easy for you to do. We're going to work on some lamb chops, but for those folks that are a little iffy about lamb, we're also going to do the same recipe for those lamb chops, and I'm going to show you a pork chop as well. It's going to be a little cheaper, and also it's a little bit more recognizable as far as a protein. So we're going to do them both ways. We're going to do a double baked potato. The lamb chop and the double baked potato are coming out of that ESO cookbook that I've been working out of. It's really just a twice baked potato, if you've ever heard of that, going to restaurants or anything, but we're gonna do a version of that. And we're gonna put that with some blistered cherry tomatoes, a little garlic. And then we're also gonna pair that with a really nice drink called the Bard's Song, coming out of that Dungeons and Dragons drink book that I've been working out of. And then for the pork chop, we're gonna do a sweet potato puree, some green beans, probably do that same garlic, maybe a little balsamic on those green beans. And we're gonna pair that one with a drink called Healing Surge. It's out of the same D&D Dungeon Meister cookbook, but that one's gonna be more of an apple. And if you've ever, kind of paired, pork really goes well with apples, really goes well with sweet. And then the lamb, we're gonna give it a little bit of bitterness, and then go more of the traditional potato style. That twice baked's gonna have some cheese, some cream. We're even gonna add to the recipe from the book, put a little bit of bacon, because who doesn't love bacon? And then I did go ahead and pick up from the bakery a nice rosemary roll to put with both of them. First, I want to start off with just the marinade. Last night I did this for the two different meats. The recipe in the book is plenty to do about 4 or 5 chops of whichever style you do. First off, you want to pick a nice dark beer. I went with one that we actually used in our first episode for our drink, just because I liked it, that Dragon Milk Stout. And I've got a cup's worth of it ready to go in. The beef stock that we had left over, like I told you, never get rid of anything if you think you might be able to use it again. This is that beef stock that, my cameraman Jacob hooked me up with some nice beef bones. We made a nice stock. That's gonna go in. There's 2 cups of that in there. I've got a little bit of minced up garlic. I knew I was gonna need it, so I went ahead and grabbed it, but I got my Khaleesi tool over here, ready to go. Different color this week. I've got a little bit of clove, and then I have 2 bay leaves. It says 1 in the book. You only need 1, but since we're gonna split it into pork and into lamb, I'm gonna put 2. One's gonna go with the lamb, one's gonna go with the pork. But just to make sure that we have 1 of each going into each marinade. Then we have our honey. It's about a 1/4 cup of honey. And remember that trick, boil it up first and it comes out a lot easier. If not, just, steal yourself one of these nice little tools. And then the last thing that we're gonna add is a kind of an interesting spice. It's called Juniper berry. You see it a lot in pickling items, but for this, it's gonna work really well with that honey and with that beer to kind of give it a nice aromatic feel to it. The only difference for, this type of spice, it's kind of like a black peppercorn. The best thing to do is to break it up before you add it to your recipe. That way you're getting all the flavor out. I always put mine into a paper towel and then just break it up until you hear that cracking. Something like a juniper berry you wouldn't want to put into a spice grinder or anything like that. You could probably get away with a mortar and pestle, but realistically, this is just as easy for the amount that we need. Get it nice and crushed up. and then add that to your mix as well. Okay, so we've got that ready to go. So I get all my honey off there. And you just give that a whisk until you stop feeling resistance from the honey in the bottom. This marinade is also gonna work in two ways. Not only to flavor our meat in the beginning, but it also turns into the sauce at the end that we're gonna add to the final plate. So you get that whisked up, set it off to the side. I'm gonna grab a plastic cutting board for this. I'm gonna show you something. This is known as Frenching a bone. It's basically a way that you can make the meat cut look a little nicer and cook a little more even. So I've got our beautiful pork chops here. That's one of the ways we're gonna do this Juniper recipe. And then we also have our lamb chops. And basically whenever you French something, this is a boning knife. All you're trying to do is get this top part, this meat up here, you wanna remove it. It cooks too quickly and it could end up burning and just basically get real tough, but it also makes for a real nice plate up as well, just presentation. And again, you know, we're trying to make our significant other happy because we've been playing too many video games and all that kind of stuff. It shows a little bit of skill for something in cooking, and it's not too awful difficult. There's a bit of kind of like tendon and that you can get your knife up underneath, and it separates it from the bone, and then quite literally you can just pull that off. Okay, it leaves that bone nice and clean. Some people, like if you were to do a bigger lamb chop, like in the book it actually has this huge lamb chop. I just wanted to do something small, but if it is a bigger bone and you were gonna have to finish it in the oven, or if you wanted to cook it in the oven fully, you could wrap this in aluminum foil and it helps it to keep its nice color. It won't black. It won't turn that nasty black or that over brown look, and it'll make for the nice plate up, but you'll end up with just a really pretty bone for your lamb chops. The same thing it's the same process for the pork. The pork actually has a couple bones in it, but it's the same process. You want to open up this part right here and get that cleaned off. You know, I told you all I use that beef stock. This is all those little pieces that are coming off here. You see that I've saved them all on the plate. As you can see right there, that was from the ones that I did. I saved all that because it can end up being a stock for me. And then we could have a nice pork stock later, or lamb stock. You can literally just put them all together, have one big stock. That's just kind of for any type of meat or any type of sauce. But the only difference between the pork and the lamb, you may get a little bit more resistance from the pork just because there is a lot of tendons surrounding that bone. But what I do is you take the back of your knife, set the pork or set the meat down somewhere that you can put some pressure, and you just scrape with the back of your knife till it cleans up, and you can start seeing that little bit of sinew that you can pull off yourself. But once you get that one clean, you'll end up with just a really nice, again, Frenched bone. That's gonna make for a really nice plate presentation at the end. And those will get them ready for their marinade. All right guys, so now that we've got our meat marinated and we've got our veg ready to go get sauteed, I've got the potatoes working in the oven. I'm gonna go ahead and put a really good sear on our meat. Once you get it all good and marinated, you wanna make sure that you shake off any of the liquid that's unnecessary, and then give it somewhere to kind of get a nice little pat dry. These are, again, the pork chops that I marinated. They've been going overnight, but realistically, you don't have to go overnight. You can go for a few hours, 1 hour, whatever time you have time for. Realistically, that flavor is going to get imparted anyways. So we've got those pulled out. They're kind of getting a little bit, you know, of the moisture off of them. Nice seasoning with salt and pepper. And then in the recipe, it calls for butter. Now, I have it here, but I'm just not gonna do that because you all know from, you know, maybe you've heard me say it in the past, my camera guy, he can't do the butter, so we're gonna do olive oil because I want him to be able to eat some of the food with me. I mean, it's just not fair to him. So I've got some extra virgin olive oil. That's gonna go down in the pan. This one's gonna be, see how that's a nice hot pan? You want it to be good and hot. This is a stainless steel pan. as opposed to the cast iron. You can use cast iron, you can use non-stick. I just like this for my final product of my sauce. There's that nice sizzle for my pork. Once you lay it in there, let it be. Don't touch it except for to maybe put a little seasoning on the other side. And then just let that go. I'm gonna go ahead and get now that we've got our pork chops, I'm gonna get our lamb chops, do the same thing, and then they go into a separate pan to cook as well. And while those are cooking, I'm gonna throw my veg on as well, just to go ahead and start letting it cook. I have some pre-blanched green beans. I went ahead and just blanching is basically just taking something, cooking it up so that it gets nice and tender, and then shocking it in cold water so that it stops the cooking process. Just makes for a more tender green bean at the end. I'm gonna throw some of those in our pan. And even though they're going with a separate, like the tomatoes are going with one, the green beans are going with the other, I'm just gonna throw them all together in here, just because they're gonna have the same seasoning on them, and then I'll deal with it afterwards. To this lamb, and to this pork chop, all we've added is salt and pepper so far. In another episode that I've got coming out, there's a couple of seasoning mixes in the ESO cookbook. I went ahead and made some of those, one of which is the Imperial seasoning. I'm not gonna go through everything that's in there, but real nice seasoning. Just be watching for the episode to come out. I'm gonna put a little bit of that on there as well, on each one of them. And we're gonna season our veg, just doing salt, pepper, and then I have a little mixture of garlic and balsamic vinegar that I'm gonna throw in there as well. So you wanna let these sit, don't move them around, don't play with them. Let them get a nice good sear on them. You're gonna know that it's time to flip them when they release from the bottom of the pan, okay? All that stuff in the bottom is called fond. Fond is basically just the flavor left in the bottom of the pan, and we're gonna use the liquid to deglaze that shortly, okay? So now that we're almost to the point that they're releasing, I'll grab myself a set of tongs here. Got a real nice sear on our pork chop. Pretty good sear on our lamb chop as well. And then basically we're gonna let these cook until they're about 3/4 of the way done, maybe a little bit more, and then we're gonna let them rest, okay? What I'm gonna end up doing is, so that I can use one of these pans for my sauce, is that I'm gonna put them all into one pan, slide them into the oven, and let them kind of finish in there, as well as our potatoes down there. That'll also help to make sure that the small bits of meat that are around the bone that don't actually come in contact with the pan, they finish cooking as well. It'll give us a nice internal temperature, and we'll end up with a nice juicy product, us finishing them in the oven. So I'm gonna go ahead. I think I'm gonna use this, the pan with the lamb in it, as our pan for the oven, because I don't want to lose any of that good pork flavor that we've got crisp on the bottom right here. I'm gonna slide that into the oven. Let that continue to work. I'm gonna move our green beans and tomatoes to the front. All right, so the next step with this pan, all that nice fond that's on the bottom, all those bits and pieces that have come off, all that salt, pepper, some of the fat, some of the pieces of meat, we're gonna take a strainer, which luckily I have positioned right over here. We're gonna strain off all of our marinating liquid. Now it says to strain all of it off. I like the juniper berries, I like the garlic. The thing that I want out of here is that bay leaf. That's not gonna be nice at all. It's done its job, it's imparted its flavor, but I'm gonna put all the rest of that down into our sauce, and then this is gonna sit, cook, and work its way, basically it's gonna reduce down into a nice thick sauce. If it's not as thick as you'd like it, I'll show you here in a minute how we're gonna do a cornstarch slurry to kind of thicken that up. Check on our green beans and our tomatoes here. I'm gonna turn that up a little bit to make sure that that skin of the tomato gets good and blistered, almost starts to pop like a balloon everywhere. It'll help to also flavor our green bean, even though it's going on to separate plates. But we're gonna let this cook for just a minute, let this reduce, let this get ready, and we're gonna work on our potatoes. All right, so we're back to the sauce that's been reducing. We've got our vegetables that are nice and getting blistered. You can see all that balsamic is starting to glaze over those green beans. That garlic is getting cooked. And that balsamic's reducing to just this really nice glaze. Same thing is happening with our sauce. It's reduced a little bit, but I really want it to be a little bit thicker, more of a gravy. But I like where the flavor's at right now. Normally what you're gonna wanna look for is you want it to stick to the spoon to where you can run your finger through it and still see some there. The term in cooking, which is just the funnest term ever, is called nappe. So that's what we're looking for. What I've done is I've made a little cornstarch slurry, which is just equal parts cornstarch and water. And all you're gonna do, you can also do this with potato starch as well. The good news about this one is you don't have to cook it. If you've ever heard the term roux, a roux is made out of flour and butter. That is a thickener that has to be cooked. This doesn't. You'll see almost as soon as you get it in here that it'll start to thicken this up. So I'm gonna start whisking, try to get everything moving, and then just whisk in our cornstarch slurry. And you can already see that it's starting to slow down and turn more into a gravy. You just see that thickness just automatically taking place. You're starting to see almost that gravy consistency. Just with a little bit of heat and that nice slurry. I'm gonna turn it down on low. And then what I was talking about, that nappe, is you can kind of see that you can see the line that I'm pulling my finger through, right? As opposed to before when you couldn't see anything. You literally see that line. So that's what we want with our gravy. We're gonna shut that off. One more toss of our green beans and tomatoes. I'm gonna shut that off. And now we're gonna work on our potatoes, let our meat rest, and get ready to make the plate, and then the drinks. I've done 2 different ways here. I've got the sweet potatoes, which all I did, peeled, I diced, salt, pepper, oil, popped them in the oven for a little while. The way that you can know when they're done is the fork test. This is on all potatoes. When they go in and they come out clean, you want them to be nice and soft. That's when you know that they're ready to go. Those we're gonna kind of turn into a mash style puree, some brown sugar and things like that. And then I also have our bakers. Same thing here. I just finished, or I salt peppered them, washed the outside, put them in the oven, waited until that fork came out nice and soft. We'll do the sweet potatoes first. So I've got a bowl right here. I'm gonna add in our potatoes. They are still warm from the oven, so it kind of helps out with some of the stuff you're putting in there to go ahead and have them warm. That way the butter will start to melt, the sugars will start to dissolve, the cream will work its way in, all that fun stuff. Here I have 4 tablespoons of butter, so that's gonna go in. I've got about roughly a 1/4 cup of sugar. I'm gonna start with about half that. I have a 1/4 cup of packed brown sugar, so it looks like more than the sugar is, but it's because I packed it down. We're gonna start with about half that as well. Again, sweetness and pork just really pairs well together. This dish, if you make it at home, especially with the pork chops and you make these sweet potatoes, it's gonna be a great dish for around the holidays just because of all the aromatics, all the smells. Next, so I told you about that spice one that we're gonna be doing soon, that spice episode. This is another one of those spices, and the reason I'm going ahead and putting it in here, this called for cinnamon. This just has that feel, that nutmeg, allspice, all those things you think of whenever, you know, it's kind of the holidays and just really aromatic, really warm kind of smells. So this is actually the Nord spice seasoning that's in the book. So I'm gonna add that in. A little bit of pepper, about a 1/2 teaspoon. about a teaspoon of salt. And then I'm gonna start mashing it just to get all that kind of incorporated. And basically this is just like if you were making a mashed potato, because you're just trying to work all that in together. Start to get that butter melted, start to get that all that brown sugar and sugar starting to dissolve. Get all those nice warm, effervescent, those nice aromatic smells all working throughout all the sweet potatoes, so that we can then move to, now that we've got we're to the point where we're gonna add our liquids. These are measured out to about a half cup a piece, so I'm gonna do them one at a time. I have an immersion blender. You can do this with a regular blender as well, but you just wanna get that in there, start incorporating all those flavors. What you're trying to do is basically get this to a nice smooth puree. And the difference between this and a mash is everything with a mashed potato or mashed sweet potato is mashed. The only difference is that, we want it to be a little bit smoother if we can. This one probably won't come out the smoothest, but it's a rustic style dish and I'm okay with that. I'm gonna go ahead and add our other half cup, or at least most of it for now. And you just want to keep on mixing it until you get the consistency that you want. And go ahead and finish off that half cup there. I was pretty close. Looks like I was dead on. This might be a little bit much, but I think it's going to work out really well for what we're going to do. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and take this off here, just kind of set it off to the side. I put these in metal bowls so that I can pop them into the oven so we can plate it all up together. Now we're going to go ahead and work on the double baked potatoes. This one is a recipe from the book, so you can check it out in there. The only difference that I'm going to do is I'm going to add some bacon just because, well, that's the world we live in. Why not add bacon to stuff? So I'm going to take these potatoes. They're nice and soft on the outside. I'm going to cut them in half lengthwise, just like you would do for a baked potato. You can see that it's nice and done in there. And then you're going to take a spoon and you just want to scoop out everything that is on the inside. What the inside is going to turn into your mashed potatoes for your filling. And then you always want to leave a little bit of potato on the inside. That's going to give you your structure for when it goes back into the oven to bake again. So we're going to take that, put it back into our pan that we baked these in, and do our next half here. So now for this one, we have our potatoes ready to be mashed. You've seen in my first episode that we did mashed potatoes in there and we added cheese, we added butter, we added all those things. This one's gonna be similar. We're gonna add in our butter while it's still hot. That's about 4 tablespoons of butter. Maybe a little bit much, but this is where you're gonna get a lot of your flavor from with this. So let that butter start melting. We're gonna add about a teaspoon of pepper, about a teaspoon and a half of salt. And then same thing, I got these measured out to about a half cup a piece. Start off with the 1/2 cup. That looks like it is going to be just plenty for this. And now I did put a little bit in there. As you can see, it's a little loose right now, but that's because I'm going to add that cheese to make it get a little thicker. And just because we are doing cheese in it, we're going to add quite a bit. So I'm going to get this is an extra sharp cheddar. I'm going to start off with about half this, which is about 4 ounces. This is about a ½ pound block. And something that I found out today, just a FYI, as I was getting prepared for Jacob to get here, I kind of let this cheese sit for a minute. Got super soft. Make sure that you hold it in the refrigerator until you're ready to start grating, just because it makes it a lot easier. It's kind of like if you were to, if you were doing a bread and you were grating butter into your dough mix, you want it to be cold so it's easier. All right, so we're going to take all that cheese. Like I said, no skimping on the cheese here. I'm Mix that up. I did grab a little bit of chili flake just because I like a little spice into that as well. That's something different I did as well. You won't see that in the recipe book, but I like a little spice in there. And then you end up with this really nice, consistent kind of creamed potato to go back in there, okay? So we have that ready to go. I do have the bacon. That's just, something that I'm gonna add myself. We're gonna fold in a little bit, holding the rest back to top it with. And this is just some, I just popped this bacon in the oven, cooked it off, chopped it up after it was cold. So now we have our bacon mixed in there as well. What you do next, I'll just go ahead and show you one of them. I'm gonna take it, you see we've got our outside layer that's gonna kind of hold it all together. You can pipe this in, but for this here, I'm not necessarily worried about that, but you want to get them good and full. Don't skimp on it. Make sure that it's nice and a nice full potato. Pick a few of your bacon strips, put those on top, and then they're all going to go right back into this pan and back into the oven for us to bake off. So now we have our green beans, our tomatoes. We've got our potatoes ready. I'm gonna finish putting those in and get them back into the oven in just a moment. But I also wanted to talk to you about the bread a little bit, just because we're so close to plate up. I want to get this done as well. I have been getting bread from a bakery nearby. You can do anything you want to if you want to bake your bread. I am gonna do some baking recipes in the future because my KitchenAid mixer, the sweet roll recipe got me all excited. But this is just a rosemary loaf. What I would tell you is to cut it into nice big chunks for your plate up. These are on the bias for me. And then dress them with a little bit of olive oil and a little salt, pepper, and put them in the oven to kind of get a little toasty. All right, now that the meal is ready, we're ready to sit down and enjoy those meals. We want to go ahead and make a drink that's going to complement each one of them. One for the lamb and one for the pork chop. The pork chop one, if you've ever heard of pork chops and apples, or pork chops and applesauce, this is going to be the drink is called Healing Surge, but it's an apple-based drink. We're going to be using a Granny Smith apple to garnish, but let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to have tequila. That's definitely the tequila right there. A little bit of lime juice. We have some apple liqueur. This is kind of like a sour apple liqueur. It's going to help us with our color. So there's two different things you can do. There's actually a recipe in this book if you go out and get it. This is that Dungeon Master's book that I've been working off of. Really cool drinks inside there, especially if you're a D&D player. They have a simple syrup that you can make. You can also purchase simple syrup. It really is what it says in the name. I mean, it's sugar and water. It's just to a certain sweetness for it to benefit the drink. So I made this one, but you can just buy it at every liquor store has it, grocery stores have it. Be near the grenadine, all the drink mixes that you have there. So some simple syrup in there. We're gonna take that, add our shaker top. Again, you wanna shake this until the outside is really, really cold. I've got our fun glasses that my wife got for me. I pour that. I got super close with that color. I'm pretty happy about that. And we're gonna finish this with some lemon lime soda drink or Sprite, just up to the top. It says 4 to 6 ounces. This is about a 7.5 ounce can, so I just did as much as I felt comfortable with. Then I'm gonna grab a knife real quick, and we're gonna do our garnish. So we have green apples here. So basically what you wanna do is, instead of going like you would normally cut an apple, you're gonna come at it from the side, and this is what is in the world of bartenders known as a wheel cut. And then you're gonna make a little slit down the side, and that's gonna go onto the side of your drink. So we have this beautiful fizzy apple drink to go with our pork. And then next, this one is actually in the book as a party drink. It's got a serving up to 6. So that's the way I'm gonna make it. So this one, you're gonna start with a big pitcher. This one does have an interesting liquor in it that I had never heard of before. It's called Pimm's Number 1. This is 8 ounces of Pimm's. This is 4 ounces of gin. Just, pick whichever one. If you like gin, pick your favorite. If you don't like gin, pick one that you've heard of before. This is gonna be about 1.5 ounces of grenadine. Grenadine is just like a very sweet red syrup. Then we have our lemon juice, about 2 ounces of lemon juice in there. And then this is the part that's been making everybody nervous that's been here. I have to pop the cork on a sparkling wine. Everyone's a little nervous. I am too, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know what's gonna happen here. I've done this a lot in restaurants, but I've never done it in front of a camera, so we're just gonna see what happens here. If I injure myself, I blame Jacob. No injuries, no injuries. It calls for 32 ounces. This is about 25 ounces. So it's probably not gonna give us the exact amounts that we want, but realistically, it's close enough. I mean, it's those weights or those measurements are based off how many people that are gonna drink this. And this is just kind of the filler. So we get that in there. And then what you need to do after that, grab a spoon, give it a nice stir, get everything incorporated. Then again, with our fancy glasses, fill up one for you, one for your friend or your significant other, about to right there, and then you want to finish with a couple, 2 or 3 fresh raspberries that are going to sit in the bottom and get nice and soaked in that flavor. And then we can also add the rest of them in here. And now you have a drink ready for your lamb dish and a drink ready for your pork dish. All that's left is to give them a try. All right, so a lot of work being done, but it's a lot simpler than it looks, I promise. The green beans and tomatoes, it's literally just a quick seasoning. These are just really down to kind of technique, which I've shown you. It's really simple and easy. The potatoes are nice and simple. It seems like a lot of work, but you're gonna see this final plate up and wanna cook this for your significant other. So right here, I have those beautiful lamb chops that came out. Got those nice pork chops that came out. We have our green beans and our tomatoes. So the green beans are gonna work really well with that sweet potato to add our bitterness there. So I'm gonna put a few of them right there on the plate. The tomatoes that are nice and blistered. Same way, except we already kind of have, it's just gonna complement our lamb a little better. So we're gonna put those tomatoes down on that plate. Take these beautiful, beautiful lamb chops, set them up just like that. You can do the pork chop one of 2 ways. You can either take it off of the bone and give it a nice plate up. Like for instance, if you wanted to, you just kind of walk down the bone there. And then what I would do is what's called a nice bias cut to get more of a flare on your final product. So for this one, you just kind of flare it out, kind of like you were playing cards. Put that one on the plate, or if you want to, do it just the bone. Leave the bone in. Honestly, if you're a sweet potato person, you were like, man, I really wish you'd put the sweet potato with the pork. Do what you need to. Make it yours. Now we're gonna finish this off with those beautiful potatoes. You grab them out of the oven here, and our bread. Can't forget about our bread. So we'll start with our sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are gonna be going with our pork chop here. Get myself a spoon. Just a beautiful aromatic sweet potato. I'm gonna set this over here so that because it's nice and warm straight out of the oven. Then we have those beautiful twice baked potatoes. You can leave them in there a little bit longer if you want to get them nice and crispy, but you can set those up just like if they were a baked potato on the side of those beautiful lamb chops. Not to forget that beautiful sauce we worked on. It's got all those great marinated flavors that are already imparted into the meat. And you just drizzle that across. Across both of your meats here. And finally, 2 beautiful pieces of rosemary olive oil bread to finish off the plate. All that ended up making these beautiful plates of food. That is going to be that beautiful lamb chop with the blistered tomatoes and the twice baked potatoes. And then we have our nice looking pork chop, green beans, and that beautiful sweet potato. Got some bread. Realistically, you can't go wrong with any of this food, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed watching. Hope you learned something. If you have a question, please hit me up. Share it with your friends. Hit the like button, hit the follow button, hit the share button. Get the notifications. We just truly appreciate everybody that already supported us and already has sent in their questions and their comments and their thoughts and their praise. And just, it has just been so awesome to get the responses that we've gotten. Really appreciate all that. Try these recipes out. You know, the more and more you get in the kitchen, the more and more you cook, the quicker that your skills will level up.